Okay, so we've modified it a little bit. So we've got incorporating both the panel discussion and ACM here as well. But we're just going to go through everyone for who everyone is. So just a brief overview of your farm, how long you've been organic for. Or in this case, we've got 3 organic farms here. Okay, so something like that. And what else you might be doing.
Well, hello everyone. My name is Matthew Gunningham. We farm at a place called Morbana in Circular Head. We milk very roughly 500 cows on our home farm. We also milk another 500 just over the hill at Monchimana. Last year we started a third herd milking through a mobile dairy using empty cows from our spring herd. So we've got an autumn calving herd now too. That herd's in conversion to organic at the moment. And we keep a flock of organic laying hens as well. So we've got our hands full really one moment. And we've been organic since, I suppose, trying to think, 2017 is when we started conversion. So I reckon 2020 was when we actually were then fully certified. Yeah.
Mark Lambert, so we farm, this is our farm. We milk 600 cows here, 65% irrigated, so we're on, through the summertime our cows are just on irrigated land, not on dry land at all. We've also got about 80 beef cattle, about 70 sheep, 100 chooks, building a little on-farm butchery and a cheesery. We've been certified organic for 10 years. And I may say, if you do the previous farming style as well, we were biological farming before that, and then moderate input conventional before that. And just going back to you, Matthew, how were you before that?
Yes, but very low input farmers, so it wasn't a giant turnaround for us really. It was just a natural evolution, I think.
Yeah, hello. My name's John Kelly. We farm 250 cows in Sheffield. We've been certified organic probably about 6 years. And history of our farm, it was pretty heavily cropped for a long time. And we farmed conventionally, again, relatively low input before we decided to go organic.
Good afternoon, everyone. Ryan Reynolds from Australian Consolidated Milk, or ACM. So my role there is Chief Commercial Officer, responsible for sales and marketing across the group, including our conventional and organic milk streams. I've been with the company for about 8 years now, and I first joined the company to head up our organic strategy when ACM was getting into organics. So I've been along the journey with ACM for that entire time, and really thrilled to be here, and I can talk a little bit about what we do with the milk and our partnership with the Tasmania Organic Dairy Cooperative, which we've been commenced this year. And we see a great opportunity for organic dairy in the domestic market and into overseas markets as well. And we're on a really strong growth trajectory and looking for more milk supply. And days like this are really important for growing and communicating about the benefits of organic and where it can go.
So this is a forum, right? So you guys ask the questions, we answer them, and don't forget Ryan. Otherwise, you'll have to do a spiel at the end. Ryan, what sort of products does our milk get made into?
Yes, there's a wide variety, a suite of products that we make out of our factory. So our factory is based in northern Victoria, a little town called Gagari. So it's about 10 minutes away from Kyabram in the Goulburn Valley. So at that factory, and one of the key reasons why ACM got into organic was just the stability of organic milk in terms of the demand for those products and the price premium that can be achieved in the market. So when we built our factory only 7 years ago now, it was purpose built to be able to segregate organic milk and multiple milk types effectively and efficiently. So at that factory we make organic butter. So we're under the Organic Milk Co brand. We do some private label butter for Coles and Woolworths. We make quite a lot of organic cheese now. So that's been a new line since 2020 that's been going from strength to strength. We do organic cream into the industrial market, so to other processors like 5am yogurt and Gelner yogurt use our cream to make their yogurt products. What else? We do organic milk powders, so we spray dry organic skim milk powder and whole milk powder, which go to other yogurt manufacturers. It also go to Bellamy's Organic for their infant formula range. And then we supply direct farm milk to other processors for their bottled milk products such as Paul's Organic, and then Pure Harvest in Victoria. We supply some milk to them for their UHT products. So it goes into a wide variety of products, and that's probably one of the advantages that we have, is being able to distribute the milk into many different streams and diversify the markets and the risk associated with selling our products across the domestic market.
If you changing to organic and looking back, what would be one thing that you do in that change differently to make it an easier transition?
So the question is, in change, like if we went back in time, now we know in hindsight, know the journey, what would we change in terms of changing from conventional to organic? So I guess I'll start since I've got the microphone. So first of all, I was fortunate enough to start going down correcting that pH journey before heading into organics, so I was already partway in there. But the actual change from stopping nitrogen use to organic, because that's really the key change in the systems. Like we had probably a 6-month period where our pastures were looking pretty sick and yellowish before things sort of righted themselves. Sulphur was a missing nutrient in that for that reason, but we'd put on a spray and fert type of brew of seawater, molasses, and a probiotic like a Great Land tea, pasture tea, and fish emulsion in that window to help change us over.
I can't really think of anything. I probably just wish I did it earlier, to be honest. I can't see any bad things that have happened. That's just being totally honest. Yeah.
So you found it scary?
Yes. Yeah, it's scary to start with. But once we were talking about this a bit earlier, I think you just have to let go of all your preconceptions of how you farmed. It's just completely different. I think that's the best way to describe it. You just got to, if you try and farm organic, we talked about this before, if you try and farm organically conventionally, so just replacing your inputs with like an organic equivalent, it's very expensive, and it just you won't make any money. You'll probably go bankrupt. But if you just let go and trust nature to do its thing, and it's just getting your mindset.
100% agree on the mindset.
Yeah, I think echoing both what Mark and John have said, really, I think we put an awful lot of lime on around that time. The farm didn't look very good when we stopped nitrogen, not that we've been high nitrogen users anyway, but and we thought for a bit, what the heck have we done here? But and I suppose getting together and with other people that were, you know, we've learned an awful lot from the rest of the farmers in our group, you know. We've made pilgrimages to this farm numerous times to come and, you know, learn from somebody that was out in front of us, and we could see it was working, to try and, you know, understand, you know, what Mark and his family were doing here, you know, visited John's place, and, you know, so really taken advantage of the wisdom of the group, I think, as much as anything, to try and see if we could, you know, learn faster.
Mark, I'm in a process of transitioning from conventional dairy to, we would like to move to the organic. And I inherit a farm that had very high deficiency of any elements, trace elements, the macronutrients. The pH was a 4.6, so it was, I think, in a bad condition. So first step I took was to obviously apply lime. And from what I understood, you are saying, okay, take care of the pH first, and then everything will start to work slowly. But should I, let's say, to help the soil or to help the pastures, should I anyway put the macronutrients inside, sort them organically, put them inside, and let's say bring the soil to where it's supposed to be, and then let it work naturally? Or should I wait that it works naturally its way?
Okay, so an agronomy question. So how long, like pH of 4.8, did you say?
Yes,
And you put how much lime on?
about 7 tons per hectare.
And what's the CEC?
I should look it up, sorry.
High, low, medium,
Low.
low? So it's a big whack. So we'll get the pH up sort of around 6 or so.
Yeah.
It should do. Now, if you look at that chart on that paper I gave you at the back, you can see that until you get your pH up into at least starting with a 6,
Yep.
a lot of your nutrients aren't available, and they won't show up as available on a soil test either. So it's not a true reading until you get that pH up. It's not a true reading of what's available.
Okay.
But if you, in there is also a totals page, and if you get a totals done, you'll get to see if are there actually those nutrients to become available or not, like, or do I need to apply them?
Okay.
So I need a bit more information. And sorry, how long ago was that put on? The lime?
More than 6 months ago.
Yeah, like lime take, especially surface application on pasture, takes 1, 2, 3 years to respond. Have you seen anything already?
Not yet. No.
Is it raining down there yet?
I've got irrigation, so
Okay.
yes, I see the response. I have grass. Grass is growing. The previous farmer did an application of chemical fertilizer the season before I arrived, but it seems like that it kind of worked and then disappeared.
Well, that's the nature of chemical fertilizer. You put it on, especially urea. You put it on, and 3 months later, it's almost worse than what it is when you first put it on.
Yeah.
Single superphosphate type of thing, that lasts a fair bit longer. Potash, that lasts a fair bit longer too. But urea's, yeah, one hit and it's gone, and then it's sort of worse. Does everyone mind these questions? Is this okay talking like this? Okay. So what colour is your pasture?
Less greener than yours. This is, let's say, a dark green in my eyes, and mine is green, but yeah, it'll be lighter than this.
Yep. The second thing I'd be looking at is sulfur, gypsum. Well, organically, that looks like gypsum.
Okay.
If you're doing it conventionally, well, single superphosphate is part gypsum anyway. So.
Thank you.
Is that? Yeah, I'd be still looking at the majors before, if it's still not got that colour right.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you also need to check out molybdenum for the nitrogen cycle. There's a big one in the nitrogen cycle. There's some lesser ones in the nitrogen cycle, like cobalt and I forget the other one actually. That are lesser important nutrients. Molybdate's the biggest important nutrient in that nitrogen cycle, and sulfur and the pH.
All remember Dr. Christine Jones said that the plants will correct the soil, and Joel was like, you need to correct the soil before the plant. So I'd like to know,
Yeah, it's a chicken or egg
each of
question.
your ideas around this practically, what you've seen on your farm.
So we put a lot of lime on before I'd even heard of Christine Jones, I reckon. I just think that when you're trying to get from A to B, I think I like the idea of lime and putting multi-species in, really. Do it all together, and I think that'll get you there quicker. Probably she's right, but it's just how long can you afford to wait, really, is the thing. So.
Yeah, I don't think Christine Jones farmed on these red soils. I don't think her approach works here exactly to the letter. I think if you start the process with a bit of lime, it'll then be in a healthy place to look after itself. So, for example, we could not grow multi-species until we got the pH up. So we couldn't go down Christine Jones pathways until we'd put lime on.
I totally agree with what Matthew said. Basically, yeah, pretty much identical.
Mark, you give your cows the salt water, but at home on our farm we give just salt. And I suppose I'd like to know, like, should we be moving to giving salt water? Like, what difference is it between salt and salt water? And then also, are you very selective about where you're getting your salt water from? Because I suppose my concern would be if it's coming from the ocean, what pollutants are in there, and maybe they're not having such a high dose that's an issue, but maybe even with microplastics, in the ocean as well and things like that. I don't know if that's a consideration.
So I used to do a lot of seawater feeding directly to the cows. It's pretty lazy. I've been trying to get some of the kids to do it for me, but hasn't really quite worked as probably as well as I'd like it to be. In an ideal world though, you're not feeding seawater for the salt. You're feeding it for the microbial importance and the micronutrients that are in it. Yep. So even when you do feed seawater, unless you're feeding a lot, like to supply the salt that cows need this far inland, they need to drink a lot of seawater. So, yep. Does that kind of answer it, sort of?
Is there a book or a resource that has really helped you? Like, is there something you'd recommend for people to start with?
Lots. I say to everyone that, when we started to go down this road, it was almost like starting your career all over again and relearning everything, almost unlearning and relearning. And so I've read just everything we could get our hands on, from Newman Turner's books, through Gabe Brown, Dirt Soil. That was a really good one. I'm trying to think. There's one called the Soil Owner's Manual, which I think is a fantastic little book, actually, because we just didn't understand. I think really didn't have a good understanding of how soil works, even. And it seems ridiculous. I did a couple of years of ag college, and we talked about the chemical properties of soil, and we talked about the physical properties of soil. We never once touched on soil biology, which I think is insane. Like how, just starting to understand how that all functions, suddenly you say, okay, well now I understand, what I need to do, or maybe I understand a bit more, perhaps. I don't know if you completely understand ever, but maybe it's less murky.
I've read lots of books, but probably the thing I'd recommend is just go and watch a YouTube video by Dr. Christine Jones called, I think it's called Profitable Pastures Sustainably or something like that. It's one she did for some New Zealand farmers, New Zealand dairy farmers, and that pretty much, probably with the exception of the lime at the beginning, that pretty much explains everything.
I would highly second Newman Turner's work from the 1920s, 30s, 40s. That's correct, isn't it? Amazing work he did back then that was against establishment even at that point in time. Along with, if you're more of the scientific mind, Kerry Reams and William Albrecht. Some of their, they're scientists, so you need to find a book that's written more about them rather than written by them. And the one that really fascinated me was Sea Solids in Agriculture by Maynard Murray.
So is the paperwork side of it, from a certification point of view, is it ever onerous? Do you find that a problem?
You've heard farmer stories.
Yeah, look, I think over the last 10 years we've learned a lot around the certification process and record keeping process for a lot of our farms. And I think the process that ACM has instilled is, having really good records means that audits and compliance are very straightforward. So there's been a lot of work gone into our process to help support suppliers and farmers to accurately keep records and make sure that it's a very light touch approach by the systems that we have in place and the support from our team, of which Beck and Brooke here today are on the ground and doing that day in, day out. So I would think that it's no more arduous than your regular dairy food safety audit that you would have once a year anyway as part of your normal compliance. So from our perspective, if you're and with the support of our team, we don't think it's a very onerous activity.
I'd agree. I don't think it's terribly onerous. The first year, perhaps, until you just get yourself sorted out and organised. But after that, it's pretty easy. I think it's probably slightly dependent on your certifier, how complicated it is. But certainly with the one certifier that we've only ever had one, and it's no hassle at all, really. No.
Just in terms of what sort of records you need to keep, though. So, feed inputs and where it's come from, GMO status, and how much and fed to what animals. So a little bit more work there in terms of than conventional, but not much. On the input side of it, you need to make sure anything that you put on is certified organic or allowed in organics, because you do not want to put something on that knocks you back 3 years, because it's the 3-year process to get into it. If you put something on illegal, you're out for 3 years. So it's probably more that particular risk is the biggest risk in it. It's not so much more onerous.
Yeah, I think that's right. And last year we changed to Southern Cross, and I think actually there it's all like an online thing that you do with a lot of your organic management plan and that type of thing. So actually it's a lot. It seems to be better again than when we were with NASA, which was all paperwork based. So I like that.
What about from like a lifestyle perspective, changing to organic on the farm, did it affect things for you guys at home or in your personal lives? And like Ryan, because you're not a farmer, but you work within the industry, do you consume organically? Is it important for you?
I think it's a very satisfying way to farm. We feel very positive about what we're doing. We feel it's important and it means a lot to us. And it certainly has been noticeable how our children are much more interested in this manner of farming compared to perhaps when we were They were younger at the time, of course, but the conventional way, I think this seems to really fit with the way that I think it's definitely sparked some interest there, which is great, from our perspective.
Yeah, I find it a lot less stressful. So on the finance side of it, like there's a lot less bills you have to write, vastly less bills you have to write, the checks you have to write, bills you have to pay. And like you're not always chasing things, like chasing when's that fertilizer coming, like it's about to rain, need to get that urea on just before the rain. Like you start to panic about that sort of thing when you're conventional. I watch my brother do that these days, and yeah, he gets a bit carried away with it. That's a big one too. Like because we sort of apply fertilizer once every 3-4 years, there's certainly a lot less. Well, you only have to work out what you need once every 3 or 4 years. It's not every 3 weeks. Yeah, fertilizer truck doesn't come around, doesn't get bogged, doesn't run into things as much. Yeah, a lot less stressful.
Yeah, I'd agree with everything that's been said already. So I think of farming, particularly organic, in 3 ways. There's the profitability side of it, then there's the environmental side of it, which is particularly important to me. Farming organically, you're improving the water cycle, you're not polluting streams, and you're not all the food supply, and you're not using hazardous chemicals, and that's the environmental bit, I guess. And then there's the third bit, which is what you alluded to, is kind of what I call like the social side. And I think we live in communities. Our farm is right on the edge of a town, and there's a few houses that live amongst our fields, if for want of a better word. And I think we've got a responsibility to the community that we're not spraying chemicals and stuff. Even if you're doing it responsibly, I personally feel that you've got a responsibility to the community to not pollute the rivers, not to expose people to sprays, and furthermore to your staff who are working for you. Who wants to go and you hear all the scary stories about glyphosate and everything else that we use in farming nowadays. I think there's a really big win for your staff that you're not doing that, and furthermore, a bit like your kids, your family. Your staff really appreciate it, and especially in dairy farming, I think staff is a really hard issue in farming, like trying to keep and retain staff. And I think most of us would find that our staff turnover is probably a lot lower than conventional farming. And actually, another thing on that, I thought I'm on a roll now. In a previous life, I used to do contam sites, and a lot of that was doing toxicological studies about people's exposure to chemicals that are in the soil and groundwater. And that they did exposure tests for most chemicals on animals and mice and stuff. And we know that the smaller the body of the person exposed to that, which makes sense, the more detrimental that exposure is going to be based on their body mass. Where if I was feeding, when I was conventional, I was feeding our milk straight out the vat to our kids when they're babies, and the thing that made me actually go organic was I backlined our cows, and I went out the next day, and there are millions of dead dung beetles everywhere. So they, just gone to the poo of the cows, and they died. And in theory, that chemical didn't have a withhold period. So you can't tell me that we've poured that on their back and it's gone through their body and into their poo, and it isn't in their milk. I don't know. They say it's not, but common sense to me says otherwise.
Yeah, I think we see it from all different perspectives with the reasons why people move into organic farming, and it's probably fair to say it's not for everyone. So if you're going into organic farming and taking all the same principles of your conventional farming background and trying to retrofit that into an organic system, 9 times out of 10 it won't work. So you need to have the right asset base, so something that produces a lot of grass, so you're not buying in a lot of feed, really good access to reliable water. So all the things that make you more of a self-sufficient closed system will set you up for success in an organic system. And we've seen, unfortunately, some of our suppliers that have moved into it because there's been a financial incentive with a higher milk price that haven't been able to make it work because they're still farming the same way with the same methodology. And those input costs don't equate to profitability from the higher milk price. So our view is exactly the same, that profitability should be over productivity. So in an organic system on the same farm, if you're producing 20% less milk but making more profit, then that's a really good outcome. So our theory is, and our philosophy is that we don't have minimum volumes. We do have a minimum volume, of 500 litres on pickup, which is very small, but we're not chasing big corporate farms because they're just purely not suited to this type of farming ecosystem. So I think it certainly comes down to having the right mindset, having the right asset base to be able to produce, and it's a really good lifestyle for some farmers as well. I mean, you've heard today that these guys aren't necessarily milking twice a day, so it can have a much more family-friendly environment for milking cows and dairy production. And the other one is what we see in some of our farms in Victoria is that because they are family farms, they don't have to rely on labour coming in as much. So some of the larger farms will have labour, some of them won't. They'll be able to manage it through a mum and dad situation, which is great. So it gives them that flexibility and that I suppose not having the hassle or the risk of transient labour and people moving and not being reliable. So I think it's a really good system for people that are considering it.
Do you pay for protein or fat?
Can you say that again?
Do you pay more for protein or fat?
No, we pay 1-to-1. Yeah, so our milk price on the organic system is 1-to-1. Yeah.
Mark, have you noticed any change in milk solids when you move from conventional to organic?
No change in milk solids from conventional to organic, but from grain to no grain, yes. Yes and no, not as much difference as I thought there would be there. So protein, a little bit lower, but not significantly. It's more just milk volume's a bit lower with no grain, but that actually, depending on the time of the year, that pushes components up as well. So, yeah.
Maybe a funny question, but from a consumer point of view, organic milk products are more on the expensive side. So, is there a path to make it more affordable?
Yeah, the key to that is really efficiency. So the more scale, and one of the philosophies that we ACM has is around building scale and production capability at our factory. So the whole purpose of having a factory that can efficiently produce organic products is to be able to pass that all the way through the supply chain to the consumer. And our theory on organic premium is to keep that to a minimum to make sure that every Australian can get access to organic dairy at a really competitive price. So there's no point in us putting a 50 or 100% premium on our organic cheese if no one's going to buy it. And what we've seen over the last 5 years is that by having a 10 to 20% premium, through being really efficient at what we do and making sure there's very little waste and we make the most of all that milk that's coming through our factory, is that we do get conversion of people looking to switch out of conventional cheese products or milk products. Not necessarily if they may be organically inclined, but they also potentially are more focused on sustainable, making more sustainable food choices. And that's a real area of the market where consumers are becoming more curious about where their food sources come from, which organic plays really well into. So there's a couple of avenues in which we focus I suppose our marketing strategy on in terms of grabbing consumers into the brands is around the sustainable aspects of organic dairy, but also obviously the inherent goodness of organics. So yeah, I think the cost equation is really important, that over time we need to be very relevant with the majority of the dairy category, but there still needs to be a premium which reflects obviously the quality of the products and the extra cost involved in processing and producing the milk.
So in addition to that, there's been a few studies out there that demonstrate that if you eat this way, and we're talking this way as in well done organics with multi-species in the case of dairy farms, or even conventional that with low chemical input but still multi-species in the animal industry side of it, that you actually need less food for the same outcome in our bodies. So the dollar value for what we eat in that situation is actually very similar.
I don't know if anyone's heard of the real cost of farming. So if you look at the real cost of farming, this is pretty big in Europe, I think, at the moment. If you actually looked at the real cost of conventional farming to society, it's actually a lot more than you pay for the organic. So all the metabolic illnesses you get at the moment with diabetes and all those kinds of things puts a massive impasse onto the medical system, which we're all paying for in our tax. So we're subsidising the conventional way of the conventional farming system, and if you added that cost on to how much it costs, if you're buying your milk, your conventional milk, and you added that cost on to that milk, organic, I think they've worked out organics would be actually cheaper.
Is there much difference in the lifetime of the cow? How many years you can produce with it?
Well, I think so. Particularly, we think the once-a-day milking helps. Takes a lot of pressure off the cow because she's not walking so far. Tends to hold a better body condition, which generally translates into better fertility, which is probably the main reasons dairy cows leave the herd, is because they don't get in calf. So I think from that perspective, yes, it certainly, but that may be just a reflection of once-a-day milking more than organics. Although I think that when the cow is 100% grass-fed cow, so she's eating what she's evolved to eat, not being pushed with high levels of grain, and as I said, walking to the dairy once a day, I think all of those things add to a longer herd life. And of course, it costs a lot to rear a heifer, so we want them to last as long as possible, because they don't really become very, highly productive until their third, fourth lactations. Then they've got, they're a mature cow, they're capable of really giving a lot of milk at that point. And so we really want to see mature cows in the herd, and we want them to hang around.
Yeah, and following on from that, because I completely agree. So we might get a higher loss rate out of the herd due to mastitis that we can't heal than conventional, but we get almost a nil loss rate in retained afterbirth, sore feet, all the other sort of health things that can land. Cattle end up being put down or going for meat. Like all those losses, we get a vastly lower loss in everything else, probably apart from mastitis. So overall, the loss rate out of the herd is pretty similar. Extra months or years, look, I suggest that the ones that are there are a lot healthier. Okay, so they don't necessarily live longer, but they are a lot healthier while they're there.
Anecdotally, I'd say that perhaps they do stay in the system longer, but I definitely agree with Mark that once you've got the system working on your farm, their general health is significantly better.
Just one of the tricks that we do on the farm for, like I said, we've got jerseys. We've seen 2 on the farm all day, so sorry about that part of it. But not even cows. So we've got jerseys, very prone to milk fever and metabolic problems. So we've learned a few tricks there in how to work through that most people don't have to do to such an extent as us. So one of those tricks, so in the calving herd, we'll put out ad lib apple cider vinegar, ad lib salt, and restricted seaweed. And so the vinegar and the salt works very much like a anoic salt, so changing the pH of the blood in the cow to make the calcium more available, magnesium more available in the cow's body, and that works as well as the conventional products for doing the same thing.
Why do you restrict seaweed?
We restrict seaweed just purely on cost. They'll eat too much. I'll just finish that little bit off and then I'll come to you. So as I said, 600 milking cows would go through about not quite 2,000 litres of apple cider vinegar a year, and around about 4, 5, 6 tonnes of salt in that same time across the whole, all the animals on the farm.
You said before when we were in a paddock, you say something about the thistle, how you deal with the thistle. I couldn't understand well, if you don't mind repeating that.
Okay, one thing you learn in organics is that why there's a weed there. Okay, we can't use a sprayer to get rid of it. If anything, we have to use a hoe or a mower. So if we can figure out what's there in the first place, we're sort of a bit in front. So something very, very obvious to a lot of people is capeweed. Capeweed is the most prolific indicator weed for low pH, low calcium that there is. If you've got a issue with capeweed, you know you need to put lime on. So it's a very obvious weed to a symptom. See you guys.
Thank you.
Yep. So that one's really obvious. Okay, so thistles are a little bit less obvious, but there's disturbance. So if you have bare ground, especially from damaging the paddock in the winter, in 6 months or a year and a half, you'll have a major thistle problem in that patch of ground. Interestingly, if you can get something chicory or something that grows with a similar deep taproot established before the thistles can get growing, the number of thistles will be vastly less because that plant is doing a similar job to what the thistle is, which is breaking up, getting that big deep taproot down. Something like ragwort, that's a little bit similar in that it needs bare ground, but it's a bit more prolific underneath the fences because of that. But really, again, it's a low calcium, low silica weed, probably more silica based in the ragwort aspect, and the thistles from what I understand too. Woody weeds, so blackberries and things, that comes to the cow, like the animals not grazed often enough, not enough pressure in grazing, and like again, pH and silica can play a big role there, but a lesser role.
How are you giving your cows apple cider vinegar? Like, is it just in a trough for them to drink? Because I've got it in a lick roller at the dairy, and I just don't think they have as much as you.
So we've been feeding apple cider vinegar for a fair few years. So we discovered pretty quickly that at the dairy, outside of calving, you may as well not even put it there. They don't need it. In the 3 weeks coming up to calving, they drink a huge amount, and a lick roller does just not supply enough. It needs to be a directly out of a trough, and the cows will sort of lap it like a dog to drink the apple cider vinegar. And we have it at the dairy during calving as well.
Yeah. I also have like salt troughs next to the apple cider vinegar, and I feel like they're more interested in the salt and less interested in the apple cider vinegar then as well. So would you say you would separate them, or you don't?
No, it's fine having them right there. Cows are in pretty high requirement for salt, like all animals actually are.
A lot of your pastures seem to have a high component of white clover. When you're sowing, are you sowing more than a kilo, or that's just...
I don't bother sowing any white clover. I seem to have enough. So when we resow a paddock these days, I've got a mix in there from Andrew Dent that's probably got 18 species in it, but it doesn't have white clover and it doesn't have ryegrass. So if we're planting it on dry land, I won't even bother adding the ryegrass in because there's just enough there. If we're on irrigated ground, I will add a bit of ryegrass into that mix.
We know the benefits of charcoal for cattle, and so we did a little experiment last week and got the fire box, and scooped up all the charcoal and chucked it in a tub, and our pregnant heifers devoured it. Do any of you guys use it?
I think Matthew and I have.
Yeah.
And have you? So certain times of the year they absolutely devour it, and certain other times of the year will just go wet and soggy and they won't touch it.
Yeah, it's actually the same.
So when do you find they devour it more?
Yeah, it's probably hard. It's probably hard to say actually. It seems to vary. It's a little bit hard to pick. I think it's the same. Like we use these mineral troughs with compartments in, and it seems like they're fairly regular at it, but sometimes things disappear more quickly than others. The seaweed always disappears really quickly, and we started mixing it with salt actually just to try and slow it down a bit, but they like the salt too, so maybe we should be mixing it with something not as tasty.
So Ryan, just a bit of a history on organic milk price versus conventional and where you might see it going in the future.
Yeah, I think over the last 10 years, there's typically been a 20 to 30% premium from conventional milk to organic milk. There was 1 year back, probably 4 years ago now, where that got really close. It was within 10%, probably 5% gap. This current year, if I talk about the Victorian situation, there's probably a 25% premium, so it's probably $2 a kilo milk solids difference this year. We're forecasting a milk price increase for next year, somewhere in the range of another 5 to 8% on top of this year. So we see it as a really stable environment where we're able to have long-term contracts with our customers domestically with the major retailers, which underpins the milk price. And as I said before, the future really, we're seeing a lot of growth out of our product streams, which is why we're looking to increase the milk pool here in Tasmania, but also on the mainland. So our aspirations are to get sort of another 30% more milk growth over the next 3 to 4 years through in-conversions and acquisition of other farms. So we've got a really optimistic look on organics in Australia and some opportunities abroad as well. So I think, typically if you look over a 5-year horizon and the average milk price premium is 20 to 30%, that's where we feel like that's probably where it needs to sit, around that $2 a kilo milk solids premium.
Do you do much on the allowing of, I guess there's a lot of waste products such as potatoes and that. Do they need to be organic to be fed, or are they just as in for human consumption they'd be fine?
That's me.
Or anyone.
Yeah. They've either got to be certified organic, or you have to get a permission to use them as part of that 5%.
However, John, did you get a bit of a crackdown on some high input supplements 1 year? Some silage that was done by a very high input farmer that you couldn't use? No? Okay. So, oddly, that 5% that we can use under a derogation, it doesn't really matter where it comes from. Are they from Daniel? Can you? They have said to you though that they prefer it to be from a similarly farmed farm out of the conventional system, or not organic, but not certified organic would be their highest preference in that.
Well, I get mine off the adjustment block, and he doesn't do anything there, so they're much happier me doing that than grabbing it from as a cover crop or something on a.
Yep. So as much as they have preferences for where that food comes from, they haven't actually to date clamped down on whether it comes from a high input farmer or a low input farmer or a no input farmer.
It's just more of a preferred thing at the moment.
Yeah, more of a preferred thing.
How many farms do you have supplying your over? Is it just Victoria and Tassie, or is it extend to New South?
No, just Victoria and Tasmania. We've in the past had a couple just over the border in New South Wales, but so in Tasmania there's the 7, and then in Victoria we have it's about 28. So we've got the majority of our milk's in northern Victoria near the factory, probably half the milk pool, and then we've got milk supply in the western districts in Victoria and also in Gippsland, so all over the state.
What is your philosophy behind organic farming? Why?
So, like John, I suppose we had an incident on the farm 10 or 12 years ago now where we had a plague of armyworms, and it was widespread across the district. We called the agronomist and he said, I'll come and have a look. Yes, look, there's plague proportions, they're eating you out of house and home, you need to spray. So we organised the contractor to come and spray, and all the drums of spray turned up and we started spraying, and I said, how much do we need to leave unsprayed for the cows to eat, so that we can, take account of our withholding period. And he said, it's 2 days for this spray. And I said, that can't be right. Look, there's dead caterpillars everywhere. It's clearly poisonous. It can't be right that we can put the cows back on this pasture after just 2 days. No, he said, look, on the drum, it says 2 days. And that was really a massive wake up for us. We drink milk out of the vat. The children have milk out of the vat, and we just didn't feel good about putting our cows back onto pastures that had been sprayed with this stuff after just 2 days. And that was the thing that really started us down this road. We then started to question, well, what are we doing? We're believing all of this advice that we're being given without even questioning it, really, not deeply enough. And, maybe there's other things that we need to just be thinking about as well, and just looking to the future. What did we want our business to look like? What did we want our what did we want to be doing ourselves with our lives? What was meaningful to us? What did we feel purpose in? What sort of business did we want to create for people that are working within the business? We employ a number of people, which have a good deal of them are here today, and we wanted to create a place that was nice to work and that they would feel good about, and we could create good jobs for the people that were working alongside us on the farm. We had it became very clear to us what we were after, and it wasn't conventional farming. Conventional farming just wasn't doing it for us. We were able to start down a road of building something that was meaningful to us and the people that work alongside us. And so for us, it's very much a holistic approach. We feel very passionately that we're doing something that's important and meaningful. Both creating really good and nutritious food, being environmentally sensitive and positive, actually, I'll say, and creating good jobs for people as well. So it was the whole thing, and we could see with organics we could do that.
There always seems to be an event, doesn't there? So my event that started me down this road was animal health. We were having milk fever and grass tetany during the milking season, and it's like, this should not be happening. So approached the DPI, approached a few other people, and they just said, add more DCP powder and cosmeg to the grain. And my work was already getting blood noses from the amount of dust that was in the grain, because it was all home milled stuff then. So it's like, we're already there, we're already doing that. So that is not the answer. So that set me down the track of researching, well, if that's not the answer, what is the answer? So that really sent me down the track of the lime and dolomite, raising the calcium and magnesium in the soil. These days, I really get a kick out of farming the way it's created to be, like the way it's this farming system in a pasture sense. All these plants work together. The cows are like designed to graze upon that system, and yes, we manipulate that system, but we do it as best we can to nature.
Yep, I agree with everything both Matthew and Mark have said. I guess I said my bit before about the environment and the community. And again, whilst I think it's important that we do follow nature, I mean, we're not going to be perfect because we are farming, but we can mimic nature as close as we possibly can, which ultimately will provide better quality food for humans, better health for humans, better quality food for the cows, and better health for the cows.
Yeah, and I suppose if we look at why ACM got into organics is ACM wants to be a good corporate citizen, and I think there's such a good story to tell around organic dairy and the whole practice, but in conjunction with that is the investment that we've made within our processing facility, we've also got an anaerobic biodigester, which is a really key part to our strategy and our, I suppose, competitive advantage, is that we take all the waste products from our facility and convert that into biogas, which then converts back into energy for our facility. So that's been in operation for about 18 months now, and it's generating about 70% of our electricity requirement for the factory. So we think that, you know, we've got a really good opportunity to tell the whole solution, whole story of the whole supply chain, from, you know, farm gate through to the processing through to the consumer. And, you know, probably as an extension of that, to show sort of the commitment of ACM in this part of the industry, is that our directors have interests and ownership in organic dairy farms within Victoria as well. So they see the ongoing viability, and you know, it's a really key strategic part of what we do at ACM, which we've invested behind over the last 10 years to get to where we are today. And we've got no ambition of slowing down. So we want to continue to grow it and continue to support the industry, and yeah, that's why we're in it.
I just wanted to share, outside, one of my other hats is I'm a paediatric physiotherapist, and about 15 years ago I went over to America and did a professional development course, and they're called physical therapists in America, and there was a lady with like 30 years clinical experience, and she'd worked in metro and rural, and she said the last 10 years she'd worked in like a rural heavy agricultural town, and she said she's never come across so many children with disabilities, diagnosis with syndrome issues, autism. Like, she said it just blew her mind with and she ascertained it to all of the high levels of, you know, chemicals, and, you know, it's subjective, but she just said that she just was off the charts, the amount of kids with issues in those areas.
I totally agree and get it. I think there's some studies out there saying autoimmune diseases, which most of those fall under, I think, are on the rise, and they've been steadily rising since probably the 50s and 60s, but especially in the last sort of 20, 30 years, they've really exponentially grown, and amazingly that coincides with the increase of industrial farming.
So I've worked with a fair few naturopaths there too, and some of the comments are, if you're in a rural area or if you're a mechanic, you're exposed to very high levels of pollutants in farming chemicals or in the oils that they work with. So they represent very highly in the high toxin load people. Yeah.
Have you had any nasty bugs in your calf sheds at all? With maybe calves?
So calf sheds, nasty bugs in calf sheds. So now we have these chicken caravans and run them around in the paddock, and we don't get anything. New site every year, and even moved within the year to a new location. So it's moved once while they're in use as well. So before that, because we were organic for 8 years before that, so we actually used to spray Great Land pasture tea through the calf sheds, just with used to be a weed spray. Just spray the cows, spray the sheds, everything with this probiotic, and we reduced our calf shed sickness down dramatically doing that.
Yeah, calf sheds don't seem to be. We've had our calves on straw, and we just keep topping up. I always say, if you wouldn't want to lay down on it, then it's not good enough. Put some more straw in. So we always have plenty of straw, and I think if you keep them warm and dry, they're nearly bulletproof then, actually.
Yeah, basically a non-issue for us. Again, we use straw, and they only stay in the shed for a couple of weeks and they're outside. I think they're much better off being outside.
Yeah, so talking about outside, so ours are, well, as I said, in the shed outside, and we let them outside 3 to 4 weeks of age. And it's very interesting watching them. So when they're young, they seek that shelter, but when they get older, they actually prefer not to have the shelter. It's interesting.
Are still using vaccines like 7-1?
No.
No, not 7-in-1. We have used Pestigard.
Nothing.
So drenches, we don't use them in the adult cows. Because our young stock are reared on a farm that's, in my opinion, well, very obviously not to this quality of pasture, that's probably the main reason we have to use them there. But that's 6 months before milking, not a problem to not use anything. Once those cattle come back onto this farm, they seem to clean up and be healthy as soon as they're back on the farm.
What would be your advice to raising strong calf, like in the first 24 hours? Do you leave it on the mother a certain amount of time?
So we do bring our calves in each day when we're at calving time on our 2 larger herds, and we give them stomach tube colostrum when they come in. We think that's really important. We are trying something a bit different on our little mobile dairy though. This time we've reared calves on the cows, which has been quite an interesting experiment. And normally they stay in the paddock with the Springer's paddock for a couple of days first before we bring them to start milking. And then we've just been rearing them on the cows, but it's only a very small scale, limited experiment at the moment just to see how it works. But at the moment it's working quite well. I think part of the good part of it is that there's no walking cows anywhere, because the dairy goes with the cows every day, so that you don't have to try and herd cows and calves to back to the dairy and have them running back to the paddock looking for a calf, because they're all right there. So it was just, we thought we'd give it a try, and so far I think it's working fine, but I'm concerned about how much milk they may drink, and also concerned slightly about how much grass they may eat, particularly as this is an autumn calving herd. In spring that's not really an issue because you've got more grass than you can shake a stick at, but
So you're not separating the calves?
No, we're not. But, yep, I'm very mindful of what Mark said. So.
Yeah, and because of that experiment last year of keeping all the calves on the cows, a couple of observations. First of all, the calves, even though they get interaction with the people, they're still a bit more wild. They're not as friendly. So that, like, safety in the dairy, not as good because they're that bit more wild. But I'm not talking properly wild. I was actually a bit scared of that. But because we're interacting with them all the time when they're with the milking herd, they're not uncontrollably wild. They're just more wild, a little bit more wild. But we ended up copying some of the things we learnt out of how the calves drank off the cows. We sort of copied into the farming system. So I don't think I said this in the paddock, but maybe I did. So yeah, we collect the calves from the paddock once a day. If they're wet at all, they stay in the paddock till the next day. We don't stomach feed them colostrum, but we do bottle feed them colostrum when they come in if they look like they need it. Like, we don't do it with every calf, only the ones that, like, you can feel their belly and it's pretty obvious which ones have had milk and which ones haven't. And then the weather's pretty awful a lot of the time during calving, not always, but a lot of the time. And so one of the things we noticed with the milking herd is that you do most certainly get losses in wet weather when you're doing it in your system. Autumn time's a bit different. So keeping them inside, we keep them inside for 3 or 4 weeks, restricted fed a little bit, but increasing to fully fed, and then fully feed them for 2.5 months, as in they can't fit any more in. Like if you go to feed the calves, you have a YouTube video on your phone that you watch while you're feeding them, because you're feeding them till probably the 4th last one out of a herd, out of a group of 48, after it pulls away because it says I can't fit any more in type of full. So, and then the last half a month we restrict feed, ready for weaning, and then wean them off. And I must say, I reckon it's the best calves we've ever reared, including in consistency, better than the ones on the cows even.
Once a day feeding, Mark?
Yeah, once a day feeding.
You're not counting litres when you feed the calves, like per calf. You're just filling it up constantly with milk as much as they want to drink until they
That's correct. That's correct. Yep. So much as they want to drink until they drop off. That's for 2.5 months. Restricted at the start and the end, but 2.5 months in the middle, as much as they can drink, which I think from my memory, it was for Jersey calves, that was 6.8 litres, I think we worked out, per calf, once a day. So, yeah, magic calves that we reared this year with it.
Yeah, pretty much identical, I think, to what Mark's doing. We milk once a day. The cows that we bring in on that day, they get milked, and then that colostrum is fed to those calves, 2 litres through a bottle. That just ensures, and then the next morning, those same fresh cows get fed to those calves that we brought in the day before, just to guarantee they've had that 4 litres of colostrum guaranteed. Probably have more because they've drank in the paddock beforehand. What else do we do? On calves, bobby calves, we use sex semen. So I think it's like 95% guaranteed you can have a girl. And that's allowed in organics because I think they use a centrifuge to separate the girl and boy sperm. And then we use beef balls. So we really try and minimise the amount of bobby cows. You still get a few, but nowhere near as many.
Do you raise any bobbies like Mark? Or?
We raise loads of beef calves. The half probably had about half a dozen bobby calves last year. We didn't raise those, no. Sell them as bull calves to other people.
So just back in terms of what I was doing in terms of the bobby calf side of it. So we put probably 20% of our bobby calves, we leave them on their mums in the milking herd, and we actually have got a little building, almost finished, a little abattoir on farm for the people that are on the farm. So I can't sell to you guys, well, most of you guys. Anybody who works or lives on the farm, we can do that in-house. That's all fine and legal. But that uses up around about 20% of the bobby calves just in people that live on the farm. So that's really quite amazing what we're doing there, and I'd love to do it 100% of those calves. But the abattoir systems aren't set up for these are 5-6 month old calves. The abattoir systems are just not set up for this weight of animal.
We registered for the Greenham Dairy Beef Scheme, and so we started down the road of rearing as many beef calves as we can. But actually, I suppose we've actually probably 2 years ago now, almost 2 years ago, we started selling beef direct to the public. So we use a couple of local abattoirs, and we're probably selling 7 or 8 a month now, I suppose, which is, we really like doing that. It's nice that the cattle we're finishing end up being sold directly to the consumer. It's a sort of another enterprise that we bolted on and can add some value to those animals. We don't have the capacity to rear all of them at the moment. But if we can continue to build sales, who knows, another day. But certainly, you know, I think we're the same as everybody else. Nobody likes putting calves on the bobby tractor. It's just, you know, and it's only done as an absolute necessity if you just simply can't keep everything because you don't have, you know, endless sheds and facilities to keep them, really, isn't it? You know, I think, you know, as an industry in general, there's a big opportunity there, actually. It's just trying to find a way to take advantage of it. I know in New Zealand there's a big calf rearing industry that sort of sits alongside the dairy industry, and specialist calf rearers take these calves and rear them. You know, I think that would be a great outcome if we could get more of that going. But, you know, we're certainly trying hard to do as much as we can, and we're probably rearing more each year, you know, with the idea of selling them direct if we can.
Okay, well, I guess that will bring the day to an end. So thank you everyone for coming, and thank you ACM for coming along here too.
Just like to thank Mark and Rosalind and family for having us here today. I think it's been a fantastic day and a really good turnout, and you know, to have such a big group of interested people and asking such good questions, it's really great. But I'd just like to thank the Lambert family for hosting us today. Thanks, Mark and Rosalind.
I had to stand up.